Hey, it's Tech. Welcome to Off the Cuff. Today we're going to cover a little bit of current events in the technology world. Specifically, we're going to be talking about ultra high definition Blu-rays, 4K Blu-rays, that are going to be coming to the market on the 1st of March. The first of UHD Blu-ray players came to the market last week. I'm recording this mid-February. In 2016. So on the 1st of March, the first titles are slated to be released in 4K Blu-ray format, UHD Ultra High Definition Blu-ray. Wait a minute, isn't this 2016? Why are we still dealing with Blu-rays? Why are they still relevant? Are they still relevant? I'm going to answer that question a little bit later, and the short answer is yes. To a small number of people, in a lot of ways, they are still relevant, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll be able to see why, but I'm going to save that for later. I want to answer 3 questions about ultra high definition Blu-rays. 1, what's changed between them and the previous Blu-ray format? 2, why did it take so long for UHD Blu-rays to come to market? The UHD specifications have been around for a while. We've been able to stream it off of YouTube and Netflix for it feels like years. It's been years. Why did it take so long for those Blu-rays to actually come to market? And lastly, does it matter? Does it matter? Do discs matter anymore? Is it an important thing for distributors? Is it an important thing for consumers? We're going to talk about that here in a minute. But first, I want to talk about the history of Blu-rays themselves. Blu-rays are an evolution of DVDs and CDs and laser discs before that. They're optical discs. They were made possible by the invention of the 405 nanometer solid-state laser, a laser diode that was in the violet spectrum. Both them and HD DVDs came about through 2 separate channels. HD DVD was literally the evolution of DVDs, whereas Blu-rays were a new invention that changed some things, had different companies backing it, and the first spec for Blu-ray was announced in 2004. 2005, the first hard coding for the Blu-rays, which allowed them to actually be manufactured and distributed, came about, and the first players and discs came to market in 2006, right about the same time as the first HD DVD players and discs came to market. And that launched the 2-year high-definition format war between HD DVD on the one hand, Blu-ray on the other. Blu-ray ended up winning. Warner Brothers was the last company that was distributing on HD DVD, and in 2008 they said, okay, we're done. Everybody else is on Blu-ray. I don't want to talk about that war in this video, though I might do a video on it in the future, because there's some really interesting things that happened and potential causes for who won. And historians kind of differ on that, but I have my own opinion. We'll talk about that later. So what about this new HD DVD or Ultra HD Blu-ray format? It was standardized in 2015. That's 7 years after Blu-ray won that format war. Blu-ray had a second major revision, or had a second revision, I should say, in 2009. So it's still 6 years gap between when it had its last tweak, which was kind of a minor tweak compared to this tweak. So why did it take so long? A lot of that's going to come down to when we look at the differences between the format. First of all, what hasn't changed between the original Blu-rays and the Ultra HD Blu-rays is the actual size. The discs are the same. The pits and lands and the lasers used are exactly the same as the Blu-ray format. Which that's a really important thing to know. That's why there's still Blu-rays, and technically, I'm not going to get into whether or not we can call when we should be changing names of things, but they are Blu-rays. They still use the same wavelength of light. They're still using the same manufacturing process. Original Blu-rays, one of the things that they did over HD DVD, which has helped with the evolution of Ultra HD Blu-rays, is that they moved the data layer of the disc from the middle of that plastic polycarbonate layer to the bottom surface of the disc. That brought the pits and lands closer to the laser. It allowed for less divergence, so the pits could be smaller and more data could go on the disk. It also meant that when you made a dual layer disk and you had 2 layers, you could actually start making tri and quad layer disks as well, because you had basically unlimited space within the polycarbonate to move up and create different layers of information. And that's actually what Ultra HD Blu-rays have done. Whereas the original spec was 1 or 2 layers on a disc, the Ultra HD Blu-ray spec has 3, 4, or 5 layers, not 5, 3, 2, 3, or 4, wow, 2, 3, or 4 layers on each disc. So the minimum size is 50 gigabytes. It's either 50 gigabytes, 76, or 100 gigabytes per disc versus 25 or 50 on the original Blu-ray spec. The original spec maxed out at either 720p at 60 frames a second or 1080 image size at either 60 interlace frames per second or 30 progressive frames per second. The new Ultra HD format, it covers the full UHD frame size, which is 3840 by 2160, up to 60p per second, so 60 progressive frames per second, which is really, really good image quality, really high frame rates, really great pixel rates on that. And that'll cover both the North American, which is the base 60, and the European standards, which are base 50. That's the maximum rate. You're still going to get 24p for Hollywood films and 25p and 30p, and depending on how formats were shot and made and who's purchased what. But that's basically the UHD spec matches the UHD television broadcast spec for 4K, which is up to 60p. With that, the original color space used on Blu-rays was Rec. 709. That's the same that your computer uses. It's the same that old analog TVs used for a very long time, almost. There's very, very minor differences between that. Whereas the Ultra HD Blu-ray, everything is going to be stored in the bigger Rec. 2020 color space. Now, again, I might do a video on that in the future as to what that means, but essentially, in terms of the visible spectrum, the Rec. 709 color space, the older one, covers a very, very small triangle, whereas the current, the Rec. 2020, uses pure wavelengths for its primary colors, and in so doing, it creates the widest, the biggest color gamut, which is the color spectrum. It creates the biggest color spectrum using 3 primary colors that we can create with televisions and projectors. Now, only a couple of projectors and no televisions or desktop displays can actually display all of 2020. So it's a future-proof color space. It's pretty cool. So all of the information on UHD Blu-rays is going to be in that color space, and anything going down to Rec. 709, it'll look washed out and desaturated unless there's an internal conversion that's going to happen. So for playback on older 4K TVs and on HD TVs, you're going to have this conversion that the player is going to be doing real-time, translating from 2020 into 709 for display. But for your ultra-high definition TVs, especially the current generation, everything that's 2 years old or newer, they're going to be in Rec. 2020 space, and it is much wider. It is much cooler looking space. You got a lot more colors. I love working in Rec. 2020. The original disc bit depth for video was 8 bits per channel. It's 420 chroma subsampled, so you have, I don't want to explain what that is, but you only have 4 bits assigned for the Luma, or 8 bits assigned for the Luma, 8 bits for the chroma, chroma red, chroma blue, and those 3 things are limited to 8 bits, 8 levels per pixel. Whereas with the new UHD spec, one of the catches with the wider color space, with the Rec. 2020 color space, is that you need more bits to be able to create more gradient between your primary colors. And so UHD is actually using the 10-bit per channel color space. So that's actually really good thing, that we're going to get more bits per color. That removes stepping and gradient, or it makes gradients a lot finer, get more detail in the image at 10 bits per channel versus 8 bits per channel. If you've ever done a side-by-side, and I have done side-by-sides, it is a huge, huge difference, just that one change. They didn't go up to the full 12 bits per channel, which is eventually, and I do mean eventually, long-term, what broadcast UHD is going to be. Current broadcast UHD, if you can call it that, there's only a few channels you can watch, are all 10 bits. But 12 bits are permitted. They didn't go with that on the current standard because the technology isn't there. It's an incremental increase over 10. 8 to 10 is a huge jump for the eye. We can actually see that. 10 to 12 is not. So UHD, the current spec, they had to deal with, okay, what's the most cost-effective technology to put in? And a 10-bit color processor, it was much, much cheaper, relatively speaking, per unit than a 12-bit color processor. So they went with the 10-bit color processor. The second thing that 10 bits allow is for HDR video. So you might remember in December when I showed my younger brother his first HDR.
Holy smokes!
And his reaction to that. Blu-rays, the UHD Blu-rays are going to be available in HDR, or at least as titles become available in HDR, they're going to be there in HDR. It's a really, really, really important upgrade for the future. We're going to see that more on Netflix and YouTube, but there's a lot of end-user technology side on your computers that have to change before you can really see HDR on computers, whereas with a UHD Blu-ray player, an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, and an UHD Blu-ray, an HDR, and an HDR TV, that's all you need. Plug and play, drop in, it's good to go today, or March 1st when it comes out. So that's the main differences in the video images. The last change between the original Blu-rays and the current Ultra HD Blu-rays that are coming out is in the compression format. So originally, the very first Blu-ray titles that came out, the Blu-ray spec allowed for 2 compression codecs. VC1, which is the Society of Motion Picture Television Engineers Video Codec 1, also known as Windows Media Video version 7. It was based on H.263, which is a different standard, and video compression is a rabbit hole that it's a crazy one to go down. But basically, it was Microsoft Windows Video that was on the discs, the first ones, because it was the easiest to compress. Later, they had this in the original spec that it was going to be H.264 compatible, but it was hard to encode at first. As H.264 became more easy to encode on your computer, more companies started using it. But the Blu-ray players can decode both of those. MPEG-2 was also permitted, which is what was used on DVDs, though it didn't see much widespread implementation on actual delivery discs. But right now, most discs are delivered, I'm pretty certain, in H.264. It's common. That's what YouTube streams in, more or less, usually. Sometimes it's VP8. But Netflix, most companies are using H.264 for HD. It's a pretty good codec. When it came out, it was really important, but it's been superseded by H.265, also known as HEVC, High Efficiency Video Coding. It is twice as efficient as H.264. It's 2 times better at storing images. So when you have the same data rate between the two, the H.265 is going to preserve 2 times as much detail. That's essentially what we're saying. It's an important thing, but that is actually the feature that has delayed the standardization of Ultra HD 4K Blu-rays the longest. The reason is they had to get chips that were capable of decoding HEVC at 4K UHD resolutions, 3840 by 2160, at 60p, and the most complex scenes that Hollywood can throw at it at high bit rates in real time. Because you can't make the standard and then say, well, the first generation of players won't play later movies. That just doesn't work. You can't standardize it first and then let technology catch up. What you can do is you wait for it. Now, both Intel and NVIDIA, and I'm pretty sure ATI as well, they all have real-time H.265 decoders in their graphics cards. And they have dedicated H.265 decoder chips available on the market. So those can now go into the Blu-ray or the Ultra HD Blu-ray players, which means you can actually have Ultra HD Blu-rays using HEVC. It wouldn't have made sense to go into H.264. The data rates are way too high in order to encode good quality 4K, though it is possible, and I've done it. So that's why it took so long. That's what's changed and why it's taken such a long time to come. But does it matter? Does it really matter in the long run? Well, for individuals like me who really love great image quality at home, who love phenomenal lossless sound, Blu-rays are still relevant, even in the HD world. Bitrate starts playing a big deal. With streaming and download, most titles are limited to around 7 megabits per second HD. Really good versions for streaming are going to be 12 megabits for HD. The original Blu-ray spec is 35 to 40 megabits for HD. So 4 times better detail than what you can stream off of YouTube or Netflix. That is a big deal, especially at 24p. You can really see the difference. Even terrestrial broadcast is limited to around 15 megabits per second for digital broadcast, and you can see the artifacting, especially on sports or anything live. It's lots of compression artifacting, and it doesn't look good. But with Blu-ray, you get that extra quality, and it's going to be the same thing with that for Ultra HD Blu-ray. While you can still stream it, you're still limited to a max about 12 megabits per second. Whereas the current generation, the UHD Blu-rays, when they come out, are going to be, what is it? I wrote this down. Nope, I didn't write it down. They're going to be maxing out at around 100 megabits per second in H.265 if you use the 100 gigabyte 4-layer disc. That is a huge deal. That is essentially lossless. I've done tests at 50 megabits per second, UHD 4K 60p, and at that point, it's almost lossless at 50. It's so indistinguishable from a raw, uncompressed file that you're going to be really hard-pressed to spot a difference unless you're doing a side-by-side. And this allows for even twice as much. It's the equivalent of 200 megabits per second in H.264 in terms of efficiency. That's a really big deal when you have a really big television. The larger your television is, the more your eye is sensitive to the garbage, to the noise, to the compression artifacting, to the loss of image quality. You need that higher image quality with a larger television. So for a select market of individuals who really care about the image, who want UHD content, want to be able to play it back, UHD Blu-ray becomes available on the 1st of March 2016, and it's going to be able to do that. So my point of view is it's probably a good idea because it's hard to find good quality streaming 4K online. So if you can afford it, obviously I can't afford it, but if you can afford it, it might be something worth looking into or taking a look at. At very least, it's probably the last revision to optical discs, so it's important on a historical note. So until next time, I'm Tech Adams saying keep thinking, and thanks for watching.